So first we need to get out our ingredients. Here we have 1 1/4 cup of all-purpose flour. We'll need some salt and some baking powder. Any brand will do. 1 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, and 2 large eggs. They can be brown or white. And we also need a little bit of equipment. We need a screen for sifting the flour, some measuring spoons, a whisk, and a large spoon for folding in the egg whites. And we also need a few mixing bowls. So first we'll mix the dry ingredients. We need to sift our flour. We add 1/4 teaspoon of salt. Okay, make sure that it's a level teaspoon. And we want 1/2 teaspoon of our baking powder. Again, making sure that it's a level measure. Now we'll mix the dry ingredients quickly with our whisk. And we set them aside. The next step is to separate the eggs. Now if you haven't done this before, you might have to practice a few times before you get the hang of it. But we'll crack the egg in 1 glass bowl, separate the halves, making sure that the yolk stays inside the bowl and the white falls down. Now we pass the yolk carefully to the other side of the egg, pouring out the egg whites as much as we can. The yolks go in the separate bowl, and there we've separated the egg. Here it goes again. Crack, break in half, let the white fall, pass the yolk, again let the white fall, and put the yolk into the separate bowl. Once we've separated our eggs, we take our egg whites and we set them aside. Now we'll mix the wet ingredients. We have our egg yolks from separating the eggs, a cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of melted butter, I like to use the spatula to get out every last little bit. And then we simply mix those with the whisk. Alright, now we have the egg whites that we separated and set aside. We're going to bring those out again, and we're going to beat those egg whites until they form a stiff peak. You can use an electric beater for this at home if you have one, or you can just use your same whisk or even a fork. Yeah, and this will take a few minutes. Okay, and we'll know that the egg whites are sufficiently beaten when they start to form stiff peaks. So when I drop it, they stay standing up. Need a little bit more here. Almost there. There we go. We're getting those stiff peaks. We can see how the egg white stays up in a little mountain. You don't want to go too far with this, or else they'll get completely dry. You want to see it wet and shiny, but also stiff. Alright, so now we have our dry ingredients, flour, salt, and baking powder. We have our wet ingredients, egg yolks, milk, and butter. And we have our beaten egg whites. Now all that's left to do is to put it all together. So first, I'm going to make a little valley in the dry ingredients, and I'm just going to go ahead and pour those wet ingredients right in there. Again, I'm using my spatula to get out the last little bits of butter. And now I want to quickly whisk together the wet and dry ingredients. It's very important here that it's quick. We don't want too much mixing. So I've quickly mixed together the wet and dry ingredients, and you can see I'm not worrying about a few lumps there. Okay, it's better to avoid over mixing. Don't worry about a couple of lumps. And now we're going to add our whipped egg whites here. Okay, notice that I'm using the spoon now and not the whisk. And what I want to do is I want to fold these egg whites into the pancake batter. And I want to try to do it in such a way that the air in the egg whites stays in the batter. So you see, I'm sort of pouring the batter over the egg whites from underneath. I'm mixing them in very gently, folding them in very gently. Again, in this phase, I want to avoid over mixing. Once you have your wet and dry ingredients put together, it's very important to avoid beating the batter. That's where we start to get some toughness in our pancakes and the classy hockey puck. We've all had that before. So, I've gently folded in these egg whites, and now I'm just going to let the batter sit for a couple of minutes while I heat up the pan. So here I'm heating my pan. I've gone ahead and put a little bit of butter in the pan, just so the pancakes don't stick, and also to give it a little extra buttery flavor. Okay, I have my batter, and you can see here there's a lot of air bubbles there, and that air is what's going to give you the light, fluffy texture that we're looking for. Okay, so don't stir it at this point because we don't want to knock any of the air out of the batter. Okay, once we see the butter bubbling a little bit in the pan, we know it's time. I'm going to use a ladle here to make small medallions. We're just going to let those cook until they're ready to flip. We'll know that they're ready to flip when we see some more permanent bubbles. You can see the bubbles popping here and disappearing. But as it cooks through, some of those bubbles will become firm. And that's when we'll know that it's time to flip the pancakes. Okay, we can see here in this pancake some of these bubbles are starting to become a little more permanent. Okay, and that's showing me that these pancakes are starting to cook. So we're just going to give them just a few more seconds here on this side. Okay, there we've got some nice solid bubbles. We flip the pancakes over. We can see them puffing right up once they're flipped over. And we'll just let them cook for about 1 more minute like that.